stay good enough to take a few questions if anyone has them, and then we're hoping to have a little bit more music here. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Amy Goodman?
Charges were dropped.
Yeah, Amy Goodman, who got arrested along with 3 other people of Democracy Now! Boy, how outrageous. I mean, you'd think that the cops ought to have a little list saying, if these people show up, you know, don't arrest them. But no, they took on the wrong ones there. But the charges have been dropped apparently against all of the 14 or 15, or there's a large number of journalists that were arrested. However, 40, but the almost, I think it's 1,200 people were arrested in St. Paul. And many of these kids have major charges that are against them. There is a defense fund for them that's called coldsnap.org. That's the name of the legal group in St. Paul. Or the ACLU will also take any donations. They need help because most of these kids that were coming in were just college kids or kids that were, you know, had minimum wage jobs, and they don't have money for these defenses. Yes, ma'am.
I am particularly interested in the sexual abuse that goes on in the wars, being a psychotherapist and dealing with that population. And I understand, I don't think it was in your book, but I do think you brought up some interesting statistics that ring true, probably parallel the general population. But I'm wondering, how do we go about bringing this to consciousness a little more? Who do we address? I mean, this is a really good reason not to fight, you know, and so I'd like for you to address that if you would.
Surely. Her question was on the issue of sexual assault in the military. Now, I have written quite a few articles in the last year about the horrible statistic that 1 in 3 women in the military is sexually assaulted or raped while she is in the military. 1 in 3. And these statistics come out of a long-term project by the Veterans Administration, where they are now asking every woman who's been in the military that comes to the VA for any type of services, and the checklist that they have to go through is the question on sexual assault and rape. Were you ever sexually assaulted while you were in the military? And all of a sudden, for women my age, I'm 62, and I started the military during the Vietnam War. My age group is just now being eligible for VA services. And so it's women like myself who have been coming forward who have been saying, yes, I was sexually assaulted. Many of them have just blocked this out of their minds, and it's just coming back to the extent that they now have 2 treatment centers for women, sexual assault treatment centers for women. The statistics on men, we're just finding out that a hearing that was held in July in Congress, the Deputy Chief of Staff and Personnel of the Army said of all of the rapes reported last year in the military, and as in civilian life, most of the rapes are not reported in the military. But of the ones reported, 10% of them were reported by men. Well, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. But it followed the statistics that we had been collecting informally by therapists all over the country who've been comparing notes of fellas that had been coming to them. And when you talk about the issue of sexual assault in a group, invariably there will be, at the end of the talk, there will be someone that will be waiting to say, you know, that happened to me, and I've never even told anyone about it. What can you do about it? Well, tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, the House Armed Services Committee, after much pushing by a lot of us, is having another hearing on sexual assault in the military at 2 p.m. It's the advocacy part of sexual assault and the prevention and response part of the military, which we feel is not adequate at all. But the military will be coming back again, and the woman who refused a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee, Dr. Kay Whitley, who is a senior DOD policy advisor on sexual assault, prevention of sexual assault, she will be voluntarily testifying this time. But the problem remains, and the more we find out about it, I mean, the more widespread it is. One other last part that I'll mention is that tragically, along with the sexual assault, sometimes comes other types of violence. And I've done a study of women who have been killed in Iraq. There are 102 women that have been, military women that have been killed. 42 of them were killed in non-combat related incidents. Non-combat related incidents. Of those 42, there are 20 of them, the deaths are very, very questionable. 13 of them, the military has said they committed suicide. They committed suicide in Iraq. The statistics are that most people do not commit suicide in the battle area. They wait till they get back home. And the demographics of the 13 do not fit any category. There are 4 officers that are a part of it, to include one woman, 48 years old, who was a grandmother. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So we're helping a lot of the families to put pressure on the military to reopen the cases that have been classified as suicides. We think that they were murders. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
As you've been talking and describing all the amazing things that you've been up to, it seems like your life is just so different than I can imagine it might have been in the military. And I'm just wondering a little bit about your own personal transformation to go from such an extreme in one direction to living a life so differently.
Well, it's true. In 2003, that was the end of almost a 40-year career in the government, either being in the military or in the State Department, starting in 1967, and 29 years in the military, and then 16 years as a diplomat. And to go from being in a rather controlled environment, where although there was some dissent allowed in government, but it's behind the scenes, and essentially if you don't go along and you are going to, if you feel that policies are wrong, and if you've given your dissent and still the policies remain and you feel so strongly about it, that's when resignation becomes the option, and that's why I resigned. I had sent forward a letter of dissent to Colin Powell about the war in Iraq, the pending war in Iraq, and had not gotten back an answer that satisfied me on the rationale for us to do that. But to answer your question more specifically, if you're going to give up a career, then the next step is, I mean, do you just sit back and do nothing after you've resigned, or do you use the information that you have as a military officer and a diplomat to help help other people understand what's going on, or at least your version of what's going on. And so that's kind of how I came into this. People in groups were kind enough to invite me to come speak, and then the activism, the true activism part of being out in the streets and being a part of a lot of events that happen really didn't start picking up actually till Cindy Sheehan, brave woman that she is, whose son Casey was killed in April of 2004, and then in the summer of 2005 at the Veterans for Peace Conference in Dallas, she said, I'm Crawford, Texas, it's only 2 hours away, let's go. Let's go down there and let's sit at Bush's front doorstep and ask him why this war is such a noble cause. And so there were about 100 of us the first day that went down there, and then the second day, people started hearing on the radio and TV that this woman was camping out in hot Texas and was going to stay there until the President of the United States came and talked to her. Well, as you all, how many of you all went to Camp Casey in 2005? Great. Well, and as you saw, I mean, people like you came, and thousands of them, 15,000 of them came to Crawford in that 26-day period. And from there, the invitations to speak and the events that followed that were all over the country just kind of propelled all of us into doing more and more and more and more. And the more like all of us, the more you do, the more you want to do. And the more you hope that whatever it is that you're trying to do has an influence on somebody else, that they too will want to do something a little bit more. So that's how it happened, and just keep moving. And I think it's just a part of all of our responsibilities to do that. Maybe one more question, and then we'll have a great closing song, or two or three, I hope.
Thank
Yes.
you. Colonel, have you heard anything about the Army taking a brigade back from the theater and stationing them here with the purpose of being an American, first time ever, I heard this on the non-corporate media today, that they would be stationed in America to handle unrest and civil events, and it would be in the Northern Command?
Yeah, that came out over the weekend, and it's a very disturbing thing. It's a brigade out of the 3rd Infantry Division, which is down in Fort Stewart, Georgia. And it is a totally new concept that the administration has, that they will have as one of the primary functions of a brigade quelling domestic disturbances. Yeah, that's what they are going to be doing. And that's why when you finish on this $700 billion bailout on your calling the Congress, the next thing is to be calling the Armed Forces Committee of the House and the Senate and everybody else saying, are you idiots? No, we don't want the U.S. military, active duty military, to be used as riot patrols. I mean, we saw a version of it in St. Paul. This is totally, this is something brand new, and it's something we need to fight very, very much.
Doesn't that violate
Doesn't the Constitution forbid?
Yeah, it does.
For police purposes?
It certainly does. The Constitution prohibits the active duty forces from being used in police functions, and the National Guard can only be used, when the National Guard's called up by the state governor for state level issues, not to federalize it, but to use it for the state level. So this is really a shocking set of circumstances that we don't know fully all the ramifications, other than I think we need to be protesting it like crazy. So with that, I want to thank you all very, very much, and Pat and Sandy, let's have some good music.